Um, Thank you ever so much for coming. It's wonderful to have everybody here, and it's lovely to be included as part of EduExe this year. So hopefully, as you're joining this session, you have an interest in digital skills, and Katie and I are both very excited to present to you our version of what we think it takes to develop a path to digital upskilling within the University of Exeter. So today we're going to have a run through of a little bit of context, the challenges, our potential solution, and also a bit of a live demo maybe on the solution that we've started to build. And as we go through, if you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. Well, even if we don't spot them straight away, we will scroll back at the end and answer any questions. And there we go. Let's see what happens. So, jumping straight in. First of all, it's always good to know who your hosts are. So my name is David, or Dave Weller, and along with Katie, we are the digital skills leads for the university. My background, I have around 20 years in education, digital education, and learning and development. Most recently as head of curriculum at a software company. So you can see where the digital skills links together.
I am very much on the other side of things. So my background is in social journalism. So I have been at the university for coming up for 8 years now, working always in online or digital projects. Prior to that, I was an international videographer working all around the world on some very exciting projects, generally with the United Nations. So again, our skills very much align, but also very different. So it's quite a nice combination, which we'll talk about later on.
It might have been exciting, Katie, but clearly it's not as exciting as digital skills.
No, definitely not.
University of Exeter, as you'll see.
Okay, so I really can't see it.
Wonderful. Oh, hello everybody. Welcome along. If you're just joining now, you haven't missed anything. Don't worry. Settle in, and we're just introducing ourselves and carry on. So welcome. So again, as a little bit of, I think as a few people have joined, just to caveat it with, we may have had the pleasure of speaking to you in the past, but hopefully there'll be more of an update as we go through and it'll be worth your time. So thank you very much for joining, familiar faces and new ones. So yes, to carry on, what we'd like to do just at the very beginning is set the stage, and we'll do that by giving a little bit of context around what the university is trying to achieve with its 2030 strategy. So first of all, with the overarching mission of investing in digital technology, making sure that all staff and students are supported. That is the main aim of the university, or well, it's one of the main aims included within the University Strategy 2030. Within that, though, there are two very interesting strands which are applicable to Katie and myself. The first one is the digital strategy, as we are part of the digital team, and it says that we are trying to become the most connected and accessible destination for any user, whether that's staff, students, alumni, or even part of the wider community. We are also part of the people development team within HR. And so the people strategy is very relevant to us as well, because we strongly believe that at the heart of digital transformation are people. If you don't have people to come along with you and learn the skills, then unfortunately your digital transformation probably won't get too far. And the people strand says that we are going to develop strong, bless you, and development programs for our colleagues across their careers. Fantastic. Whoever that sneeze was, I can really empathize. Katie and I have both got COVID at the moment, so if we're a little bit under the weather or do sneeze quite loudly, then please forgive us, but definitely empathy. And that is the background that we're operating in. So
to give you a context of digital skills leads, which Dave and I are, we came into post in August last year, and it's a totally new role for the university. Interesting to note that we are funded by the digital team, but we're actually line managed by HR, which is quite an interesting dynamic, and has really suited our roles and our success within the roles in terms of getting that stakeholder engagement, and also in terms of actually getting things built very, very well. And we'll talk about that a bit later on. So as digital skills leads, our remit is to upskill in everything digital, all staff, all students, alumni, and the wider community, and probably lots of other people after that. So as you know worries about that, Anna, at all. We all sneeze. As you can tell from that, it's a very huge remit, and slides will be available after this. Yes, Christian, not a problem at all. It's a huge remit, and so really from day one we thought, well, how are we going to tackle this? Because actually in total, if you just look at staff and students, that's around 40,000, forgetting alumni in the wider community. So we thought, A, how are we going to tackle it? And B, the biggest question that we get asked in every single meeting we go into is, but what do you mean by digital skills? And for us, we opted for GISC's definition, because for us it really kind of resonates with our thoughts. We're not just talking software, we are talking mindsets behind that as well. So GISC's definition is digital capabilities are those which equip someone to live, learn and work in a digital society. I think I would also throw in the word thrive. I've seen that in a few definitions, and I really like that word, because I think Dave and I are very, very focused on not making this just about upskilling people for the workplace, but actually breaking those anxieties around the word digital in itself, and actually making people feel comfortable and safe in their space at home, in their personal lives. So it may be the mum who wants to sit on the sofa with their daughter and work on some online programs, but is very nervous around actually the safety angle of that. That's for us to try and help them break that down that anxiety, because it's the well-being piece of the whole person that we're very much focusing on. So looking at the overview as to how we're going to try and tackle this, we very quickly from the beginning just thought, we know there's an awful lot of really, really fantastic resources within the university. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's the first point of things. I've been involved in creating some of them. I've certainly been in teams where I've used an awful lot of them. But as we know at the university, there's an awful lot of silos, be it within teams, departments, faculties, or the wider university. So our first challenge was, how are we going to be able to pull all of those really, really fantastic resources together into one area? And that was really our starting point, was we need to have one central point. So we needed to have a digital skills library, but we also needed to be able to reach out to people around the university and say, please work with us. And we're still saying that, by the way, and we will be asking you the same thing at the end of this presentation. Reach out to us if you've got some resources that you've used that have been really, really useful. And likewise, if you've got an idea for a resource that you would love to create, whether it's for your team or as part of your department, work with us in creating it. We do have 2 new resource members who are specifically employed to make resources with us. So if it's digitally skills focused, please reach out to us and say, I've got an idea, I've got this idea for something, reach out, share it with us, and we will very, very happily have that conversation with you. So we've gone through the various things that we outlined. So we've produced the library, we're producing it, we're filling it with resources. But as Dave loves to say, that library needs an on-ramp.
So this is a taste of what our solution will look like. Now, for many months, it was just Katie and I throwing ideas backwards and forwards, doing research, speaking to many, many people, and trying to communicate to them about what this would look like. It was easy for us because we were living and breathing it, but trying to get that across to other people was difficult. Now, however, we have a sort of prototype or a demo which we're able to show, and so hopefully this will give you a taste of things to come. So imagine you're a member of staff and you either having a chat with your line manager or a colleague, or you have run into an issue at work and think, you know what, I really do need to spend a little bit of time to work on a particular aspect of digital skills, or you're simply curious. So you'd come to the Digital Skills Initiative and you'd land here. Hopefully it'd be very friendly, non-threatening, and you'd scroll down and you'd see that you have 2 options, as well as a very handy frequently asked questions section, just in case you're not sure where you are or what you need to do. This will be able to give you some guidance. So 2 options. The first one is simply to browse the digital skills library. If you're curious. Now, do apologize for the fact this isn't populated at the moment. It's something we're frantically working on at the moment. As Katie said, when we reached out to everybody we could think of across the university, they've shared with us their resources. They will become links that sit in this library. So if it's an example of how to use AI in teaching, it will sit here. If it's how to use MS Teams or so on and so forth across all the different categories of digital skills. Now, something we very quickly realized is there's a very wide range of digital skills, and we needed a very logical and orderly way to categorize those. We looked at the various digital skills frameworks that are out there. There are a few, and we settled on one from JISC that you might have heard of, which they name their individual skills capability framework. This has around 6 main categories and 15 subcategories, everything from digital creation to digital communication, data literacy, and all the way to the other end of digital well-being as well. So it makes it easier when you want to filter this filter and look up a specific category or a specific media type. You're able to browse, have a look, and dip in and out as you like, really. So hopefully that's quite useful as a one-stop shop for digital skills. But where we feel the magic really happens is, as Katie said, we know from experience from if you give people a lot of resources at the same time, for example, LinkedIn Learning or any library of resources, if you simply throw that at them and say, here you are, kindly go and upskill yourself, they quickly blow a fuse because there's simply too much information. So we would like to provide an on-ramp to them, which essentially is asking them to self-assess their current levels and then provide them recommendations of next actions and next learning to take. And that's where the self-assessment tool comes in. Now, we want to set expectations as somebody starts using the tool. So we tell them it'll take around 30 minutes, although the second or third time they use it, it'll be probably a lot faster once you're used to it. We want to emphasize that it is a quiz. It's not a test. It's not an assessment, so there are no wrong answers. And most importantly of all, your answers to the quiz stay private. If you're a member of staff, the recommendations that are made to you will be shared with your manager. This is simply to kickstart the PDR discussion. So really, we'll go into that a little bit later, but yes, in effect, your answers will remain private to you forever. So let's continue.
As Dave mentioned, there are an awful lot of off-the-shelf options out there where you can get self-assessment tools. For us, one of the key reasons, and we will come into this a bit later on a different angle, but one of the key reasons we really, really wanted to develop something in-house was, as I touched upon earlier, in terms of that anxiety piece. And we wanted to, as much as possible, be able to create something that we knew would be personalised and as known and friendly to the University of Exeter staff as possible. And so by doing this, all of the words that we've used, the visual colours and identity pieces that we've used, we've really tried to keep that in our minds as to, how can we make this as simple and easy and comfortable to use, because we recognise for many people it isn't a comfortable topic to talk about, especially when you're putting yourself out there in terms of a self-assessment tool. So that just is to kind of think about as we're going through this tool. And if anyone's got any thoughts or ideas, we'd be very, very keen to hear them, because this is a working prototype. It is in the demo stages. So going back to the profiles again, talking about that personalized piece, we have borrowed from JISC. They have probably about 9 or 10 different profiles. So whether you're specific to a researcher or a librarian, because it's all tied into Trent, it will automatically know whether you are an academic or a professional service staff member. So again, what we've tried to do is take as many clicks out of the equation as possible. We can't get to the Amazon one click, but we're going as close to that as we can do. So as soon as you click on the link, it will know that you are. So for me, I'm logged in, it's professional service, and it will throw you to that relevant profile that will, yeah, again, just personalizing and bespoking it to specifically what I would require.
So after you've selected that profile, then the quiz starts in earnest. So as I mentioned, there are 15 JISC subcategories. And for each one, you see a little bit of information about that subcategory on the left. In this case, it is around digital creation. It gives you a little definition. This is, again, taken from JISC. We started trying to write our own, but after scratching our heads and getting a bit befuddled, we realized there's no point reinventing the wheel. And as they make all of their learning and resources available to universities around the country and the world, we thought, why not? It also gives some further examples. This does change based on the profile that you choose. So if you were to select the researcher profile, it would give you further examples around your specific job or role. So that is actually very useful and helps you situate what this subcategory actually means in your day-to-day work. Then on the right-hand side, there are 2 to 3 questions around each subcategory. So for example, the first one asks you, how confident do you feel in this particular subcategory? And how interested are you, or how relevant is it for your role? Now, this is quite key because these 2 answers add their weight to the algorithm on the back end, which crunches the numbers and then makes a recommendation to you about which learning might be most relevant or useful to you at the end. This third question, suggested resources, this is one where we're starting to work hand in hand with heads of department to ask them what patterns have they spotted for staff and students about digital skills that would be very, very useful if people would upskill in them. So, for example, programming or data visualization students, they might be very familiar in R, but not very familiar in Python, but the department uses that particular programming language. So it'd be really, really useful to make sure that they're at a certain level in that. And if they're not, if they know R rather than Python, they could click here and go, oh, good catch. I'll make sure I brush up on that when I need to. And so it continues. You go through and read more about the next subcategory, answer questions, and choose any specialisms that the head of department has recommended would be very, very useful. Then you carry on. I won't go through every single one of these and bore you to tears. But again, we're able to send more information if you're interested. So let's zoom to the end and see what happens when we click the last continue button.
Great. So as Dave mentioned briefly before, what is really, really important, again, playing into that whole anxiety and mindset piece, is for us that the results that come off the back of the 15 questions remain private and private to you alone. So the data from that will not be shared or used at all. However, as we click continue into the learning dashboard, what we will be seeing is there are resources that are supported that will be shared with you. So let's hit continue if we can, and there we go. So again, we've tried to make this as visually appealing as possible. This is still something, a page that we are working on at the moment. But here you can see your answers to the 15 questions are demonstrated there. It will also be able to show you your development, we hope, over time. So you'll be able to go back to your original go, and then years later, however long it is, you'll be able to see your results now. Our expectation is that this will be used in advance of the PDR time, so that it can really help facilitate that question with your line manager. It's something when we've been talking to stakeholders, we've heard a lot is potential concern around, but as a line manager, I'm not going to know the answers. What happens if they ask me about digital skills? For us, this actually takes that dilemma out of the picture. This isn't that we have expectation of the line manager knowing the answers. It's actually that the self-assessment tool will give that staff member the guidance as to where they can upskill. What it does, however, is by suggesting learning resources towards the bottom, it will then give the line manager and the employee the opportunity to see suggestions as to where they can upskill. So they can have that dialogue with their line manager of, I don't agree with this, or I'd like to learn more in this area, but also it will give some kind of sense of time. So again, given that we're suggesting this is taken every 12 months, we're hoping that they will come up with resources that maybe 6-7 hours worth of time over a 12-month period. You've got your ballpark figure then that your line manager can then say, right, okay, 6 or 7 hours, how can I start helping you be able to develop yourselves digitally over the next 12 months using these resources? So it actually really, for us, enhances through data really that conversation with the line manager, and also we hope gives the person using the tool the opportunity to go, look how much I've developed over this time, and give that sense of positivity and reassurance back into it.
Absolutely. Let me just change screens back now to the presentation. But it's worth noting as well that as well as sitting and being used for the PDR, we're very much hoping that it's used also for new staff for the onboarding. So this will give all new staff an opportunity when they first arrive to, as they view the new onboarding portal, they'll be able to have a look. And while it won't be mandatory in any way, just like it won't be for the PDR I just suggested, the new staff will be able to have a quick check, assess where their skills are, and hopefully choose some learning items or two to get ready for the new role. So hopefully you can see my screen again. Now, data is a really interesting question. So while your own data, your own answers will remain private to you and won't be shared with anyone outside yourself, what it does give us a chance to do is to aggregate and anonymize all of the data so we can get an overarching picture of where the university is with digital skills. So almost like a training needs analysis, but for the whole institution. So what we're hoping to do, and unfortunately there are no fancy graphics or demos at the moment because we're just starting to build it, but we're hoping to allow managers at all levels to be able to log in and see how their team is doing. So if you are a line man, as long as your team has at least 6 people in, you should be able to log in and see how the team is doing, assess if they're all doing very well, or if there's a certain area where staff aren't feeling very confident and that overlaps, you might think, okay, let's make some time as a team to look at this certain area of digital skills. As you move up the university, obviously the number of staff members that are data that's aggregated and anonymized grows larger and larger through team, department, division, faculty, and eventually to the whole university. So you better see at a glance how well the university is doing and where we can make some data-informed decisions about where to persuade certain stakeholders to allow more time to develop in digital skills. That's the idea anyway.
So as we've already touched upon, this is very much a tool that is going to be available to all students and staff. We are starting with staff, just to answer somebody's question in the chat, but we will be extending it in version 2 out to all students. There's a few technical things that we have to do around that, so we can't launch it all at the same time, but it will be staff first, and then students after that. As it's a tool for everybody, we have therefore really taken it upon ourselves to try and talk to as many stakeholders as possible, to really get the lie of the land when it comes to what people want, what the challenges are, what the concerns are, what the needs are, and really do an awful lot of listening first round. Then we've gone back and we've spoken to them and said, right, these are our thoughts, these are our ideas, role play with us. What do you think about this? How can you, give us some constructive criticism as to where we could improve? Alongside all of that, we've been really, really focused on working within the legal systems of the university, because obviously this is an online platform that we're producing, so we're very much in hand with all the legal teams and HR to make sure that we're fully compliant. So you can see a list of all the different things that we've taken into account there. If there's anything anyone thinks we haven't, that they see it's missing, reach out. That is not a full list by any stretch of imagination. And we've also been very keen and done increasing amounts of work with external organisations just to get the lie of the land and just make sure that the product that we're producing is future focused. Interestingly, we did present at the Times Higher conference that was held at Exeter back in April, and this quite clearly is the only one of its kind being built within university systems within the UK and it's getting some interest, because what we've seen quite a lot of the challenge for people who've taken the off-the-shelf packages generally is very much you can have the information, but it's not necessarily hooked in with the data to the resources, and certainly not on that bespoke angle. So for us, we feel we are making it as future focused as possible, but because we're creating it from scratch, it will take some time, and we can't just take it off that shelf and plug it in. Right, over to you, Dave.
Wonderful. So talking of timescales, because as soon as we mention this, after asking what digital skills means, everybody says, oh, this makes sense. When is it available? Can we have it now, please? To which our answer is always, please give us a little bit more time. We are working, basically, since we came in post, as Katie said, we've been researching, listening, creating, testing solutions, and we were working as fast as we could to create a working prototype in time for the Times Higher Education Conference, Digital Universities UK, which happened in April at Exeter. Now, after that's finished, we've now been working to try and build out the digital skills library so it actually has some useful content in there. Because you can imagine what would happen to a lot of staff or anybody using it if they log in, take the tool, find out their, get to their learning dashboard, and then have no recommendations that are of any use to them. It'd be a little bit like using Netflix, but then having no movies that you like to choose from. So not ideal. So we're busy doing that at the moment, and we're hoping to start user testing and piloting within departments starting from this summer, maybe from the end of July or beginning of August onwards. Now, we have a few departments that have volunteered, but if you're interested, if your team or department division wants to get in, maybe not division, but wants to get involved, then please do let us know. Shoot Katie and I a message, and we'll be happy to chat to you and talk about when, where, and how, and all the details. So with that in mind, we will be piloting and testing with the aim to release to all staff on the 19th of March 2025. And the reason we've chosen that day, it's not an arbitrary one, but that happens to be UNESCO's International Day of Digital Learning. Now, I think 2023 was the first first year that they'd done that day, and so this will be the second. So we're very excited to try and use that as a springboard to raise awareness and get everybody on board to test and find out where they are on their learning dashboard to get their digital skills self-analyzed. After that, we will be aiming to pivot and look at how we can adapt this and what changes need to be made in order to be able to release this to all students. There are quite a few technical problems, but also technical barriers to overcome to be able to do that, but also how can we adapt the material? For example, in the digital skills library at the moment, there are quite a few staff or teacher or academic staff facing materials, but we'll need to switch those out for more student facing ones, which materials can we reuse, and so on and so forth. After that, we'll turn our eye onto alumni, and then even after that, onto the wider community. But as such, for those last 2 or 3, we don't have definitive timelines yet. We're going to be seeing how it goes with the version for all staff first. Now, I had an interesting question from Anna in the chat a second ago around vision for students for integrating digital skills into the curriculum. Now, just to emphasize, we're not integrating it into the curriculum, we're solely acting as a supporting function. I believe there's another project aiming to tackle that, Curriculum for Change. So we're leaving that well alone. So this definitely won't be credit bearing materials in any way. It'll just be very useful content, as much of which we can create in-house as possible, but we will rely on external, so not credited in any way, just as their support and for people to dip into and out of as they see fit, as they need.
I think to mention on that as well is that we have already spoken to the student staff members, and they are very, very keen on putting this in induction materials for students, so that when students are coming into the university, I believe there's a few weeks where they will get access to their university email prior to actually starting on their course, and they're saying that's the sweet spot, and that's when students have got some time to be able to and are keen to be able to get their teeth into stuff. So we will be working with the induction team and putting the link to this when it's up and running for students into that, so they can then really use that self-assessment tool to kind of find out their strengths and areas of development at the first point, hopefully before entering the university, and catch them right at the beginning through that. And then we'll be there to support them, you know, throughout. They'll be able to, just like staff, use the self-assessment tool at any point. Likewise, they'll be able to just go straight to the library to use that as and where they need to, and then they will have it for a full year after they graduate as well to be able to use it within that student belt. It's all around the University of Exeter email applicant.
I saw Fiona has an interesting question as well, to find out more information about the actual resources. Are these all being developed in-house as well? Do you have a list of what is going to be in there? So this is a really interesting question, actually, because we want it to be as bespoke as possible. And this was a main driver to develop something in-house rather than take an off-the-shelf solution. Because JISC actually do offer a diagnostic tool which is similar, but there's a few major issues with it. One, you don't get any of the data back, or you don't get nearly as much back. Second, you have to rely on their library of resources. I think you're only allowed to add 15 of your own, whereas we've got, you know, hundreds that we'd like to add. So we will develop as many as we can in-house. Sorry, we've already got a whole bunch that have been developed in-house. Secondly, we are looking to fill the gaps for tools that are updated very quickly with external materials. So for example, fast-moving sectors such as AI, or, you know, like tools developed by Microsoft or Adobe, ones that get regular updates that company or organization also provides regular training for. We might lean on those external resources where they're open source and free and easily available to anybody. But as to what we develop in-house, because we have recently commissioned a couple of learning developers, learning designers, to help us fill the library. And it's a really interesting question about what we choose. So what we've done is we've taken all of the library that we've curated and collated from everybody else. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we categorized it into the JISC frameworks. Now, of those 15 subcategories, we found that some were extremely well populated. Things around digital communication, digital collaboration. There was lots of materials. But some others, especially the one that pops to mind is digital well-being, is maybe one or two, or in some cases, I think almost none, depending on what you're looking for. So it's those areas where we don't have any that we'll be looking to create and populate the library with those. So that's what we're trying to do. If you're interested and to see what might be in there so far, please give us a shout. We have an open spreadsheet that we've been sending out to different people to ask them to look in their departments and their teams and actually drop links to the material. So it's very rough and ready, but that might give you some idea as well.
Dave, why don't you share the next slide with people, and then that's a nice segue into people being able to get in touch with us if they would like to directly connect with us after this workshop, but also where they can find out more information. We will be keeping regular updates on here, or if you come out of this presentation and think you'd like to share the information with somebody, by all means, please feel free to share this link with others, because, you know, our message at the moment, aside from really desperately asking people to work with us in creating resources, is also to just share the information around the university and cascade what we're doing ahead of us doing our user testing over the next few months, and ultimately our launch in March next year.
Absolutely. And I see Anna, will we have access to the slides after the session? Well, there isn't, I'm not sure how EduExe works, if they share this along with the recording, but even if they don't, if you visit this website, there is a copy on the front page. You'll be able to go scroll down and scroll through the slides as well. We'll be updating those slides with these slides very shortly after this presentation. So yes, either way, you'll be able to get a copy.
Christian has also put a question in the chat around the link between the roles and the skills that are required. And I think this is a really good point, Christian, actually, because it really evidences why we've chosen to go with JISC, because they, you know, are such a huge, well-respected organisation. I think they're working with 150 or so universities around the UK on developing this framework that is specifically focused around digital skills. And when we've looked at other similar frameworks, none of them break it down to the actual specific role. Now, a caveat on this is it's not every single role within the university, but what they have recognised, if you look at the link that I've put in the chat already, is they will break it down to academic, so lecturer and researcher, and then or both. And using things like that, it's all working with accredited sector leading organisations. So it's linked into the professional standards framework, for example, for the academics. And likewise, where you're looking at professional service side of things, the librarian pieces of profile or the digital leader profile are all linked into the accredited industry sectors within that. So they've worked very much in hand with all of those. I mean, I can only imagine the time that it's taken them to do that. And we've interestingly just had an email from them today saying they're even creating a new one around the educator developer role as well. So that's hot off the press. We'll be putting that in our tool as well next week, which is quite exciting. But we think very much that is where we're going to be able to personalize this, is that people can really hone it down into as close an area to their interest as possible.
Perfect. Yes. Oh, and one last question, Anna. It looks like you need a University of Exeter account to log in. Yes, apologies for this SharePoint site. You will do. So we'll talk to the organisers of EduExe about sharing the slides afterwards because they'll have everybody's details. Good point. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to fire away.
So Christian's put broad professional standards frameworks. Yes, the profiles are broad. However, as Dave has mentioned, on the question 3, if you remember, on the self-assessment tool, at the bottom of every profile question of the 15, we have reached out to all departments and all divisions to say, have you got specific areas within this category that you think staff within your department or division would benefit from knowing? And we will put a suggestion in there based on what they're saying to us, so that then every individual can say, okay, yes, like we said with Python, that's something I want to upskill in more, or no, that is a need within my department, but I feel fully upskilled in it, I'm okay. So again, just that's the way we're personalizing it more.
Awesome. Okay. Well, in that case, thank you very much, everybody. It's been wonderful to have your time and attention for the last 40 odd minutes. We hope it's been useful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Katie or myself. And yeah, we hope that you'll continue to join us for the digital skills journey that we're on.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Love to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.